You know, there was this clip that went viral with the interview on CBS News with the author Ta-Nehisi Coates. Now, Ta-Nehisi Coates is an author who, you know, whatever book award he's won it, right? And he's had best-selling books, and I mean, really lauded as like one of the great authors, particularly, and I wouldn't even just qualify it as black, but one of the great authors in the past generation. But Ta-Nehisi Coates decided to do a book, and in that book, he also decided to take on. He talked about Senegal. He talked about I forget the other place that he mentioned in the book, but he also decided to take on the conversation around Israel and Palestine. And it was interesting when he went to do this conversation about his book on CBS News, what seemed to be like just kind of a puff little interview kind of turned a little bit, and it's a longer clip, but we want to play that. Can you push the button on that, Farouk?
Our next guest is the acclaimed New York Times best-selling author Ta-Nehisi Coates. His new book, The Message, is a trio of interconnected essays that examine how the stories we tell or avoid telling can shape and even distort our reality. In the book, Coates reflects on his emotional first trip to Africa to visit Dakar, Senegal. Then he takes readers to Columbia, South Carolina, where he reports on the attempted banning of one of his books on race. And finally, Coates travels to the Middle East to witness the Israeli-Palestinian conflict firsthand. Ta-Nehisi Coates, good morning. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. Good morning, guys.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. You say that this book is written specifically for writers, stating that the task for young writers should be nothing less than changing the world. Why do you feel like writers should bear that responsibility?
Saving the world. Saving the world, just to be really specific.
I love that approach to the art, you mean?
Writing is how we interpret so much of everything that is around us. The Message is a political book. It argues that much of our politics actually happens before we walk into a voting booth, that our choices around us, that who we believe is human, who we don't believe is human, what policies we believe should be in the world, which policies we don't, are actually shaped largely by writing and the stories we tell. And so I believe that writers, and particularly young writers, have so much to do in the politics and in this time when, you know, obviously we have so much conflict and there's so many quote-unquote issues to deal with.
Ta-Nehisi, I want to dive into the Israel-Palestine section of the book.
He was like, let's cut all of this niceties.
When I read the book, I imagine if I took your name out of it, took away the awards and the acclaim, took the cover off the book, the publishing house goes away, the content of that section would not be out of place in the backpack of an extremist.
Wow.
I found myself wondering, why does Ta-Nehisi Coates, who I've known for a long time, read his work for a long time, very talented, smart guy, leave out so much? Why leave out that Israel is surrounded by countries that want to eliminate it? Why leave out that Israel deals with terror groups that want to eliminate it? Why not detail anything of the first and the second intifada, the cafe bombings, the bus bombings, the little kids blown to bits? And is it because you just don't believe that Israel, in any condition, has a right to exist?
Well, I would say the perspective that you just outlined, there is no shortage of
it's one of these. One of these.
But I'm familiar with yours. You're not familiar with mine.
Yes.
I am most concerned always with those who don't have a voice, with those who don't have the ability to talk. I have asked repeatedly in my interviews whether there is a single network, mainstream organization in America with a Palestinian American bureau chief or correspondent who actually has a voice to articulate their part of the world. I've been a reporter for 20 years. The reporters of those who believe more sympathetically about Israel and its right to exist don't have a problem getting their voice out. But what I saw in Palestine, what I saw on the West Bank, what I saw in Haifa in Israel, what I saw in the South Hebron Hills, those were the stories that I have not heard. And those were the stories that I was most occupied with. I wrote a 260-page book. It is not a treatise on the entirety of the conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis.
But if you were to read this book, you would be left wondering, why does any of Israel exist? What a horrific place, committing horrific acts on a daily basis. So I think the question is central.
Is it the book, or is it the reality on social media?
And if your answer is no, then I guess the question becomes, why do the Palestinians have a right to exist? Why do 20 different Muslim countries have a right to exist?
My answer is that no country in this world establishes its ability to exist through rights. Countries establish their ability to exist through force, as America did. And so I think this question of right to Israel does exist. It's a fact. The question of its right is not a question that I would be faced with any other country.
But you write a book that delegitimizes the pillars of Israel. It seems like an effort to topple the whole building of it. So I come back to the question, and it's what I struggled with throughout this book.
Racism is bad.
What is it that so particularly offends you about the existence of a Jewish state that is a Jewish safe place and not any of the other states out there?
There's nothing that offends me about a Jewish state. I am offended by the idea of states built on ethnocracy, no matter where they are.
Muslim included.
I would not want a state where any group of people laid down their citizenship rights based on ethnicity. The country of Israel is a state in which half the population exists on one tier of citizenship, and everybody else that's ruled by Israelis exists on another tier, including Palestinian Israeli citizens. The only people that exist on that first tier are Israeli Jews. Why do we support that? Why is that okay? I'm the child of Jim Crow. I'm the child of people that were born into a country where that was exactly the case of American apartheid. I walk over there and I walk through the occupied territories and I walk down a street in Hebron. And a guy says to me, I can't walk down the street unless I profess my religion. I'm with another pastor. No. I want to, this is very, very important. It's extremely important.
Let me lay it down.
I'm working with the person that is guiding me is a Palestinian whose father, whose grandfather and grandmother was born in this town. And I have more freedom to walk than he does. He can't ride on certain roads. He can't get water in the same way that Israeli citizens who live less than a mile away from him can.
And why
is that okay?
Why is that? Why is there no agency in this book for the Palestinians? They exist in your narrative merely as victims of the Israelis, as though they were not offered peace at any juncture, as though they don't have a stake in this as well. What is their role in the lack of a Palestinian?
I have a very, 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 very moral compass about this. And again, perhaps it's because of my ancestry. Either apartheid is right or it's wrong. It's really, really simple. Either what I saw was right or it's wrong. I am, for instance, against the death penalty. What the person did to get the death penalty, it really doesn't matter to me. I don't care if they were selling a nickel bag of marijuana or if they were a serial killer. I am against the death penalty. I am against a state that discriminates against people on the basis of ethnicity. I'm against that. There is nothing the Palestinians could do that would make that okay for me. My book is not based on the hyper-morality of the Palestinian people.
You can cut that. You can cut that. Yeah. She was like, yo.
This is not what we discussed.
Yeah. But again, I think it is fascinating, right? And I think and obviously Miracle is ready. But we've had this conversation on this show, right? And we've had this conversation.
I mean, you went there and experienced exactly what Ta-Nehisi Coates
I went there. I was in Hebron. I experienced that, and it was, you know, it takes your breath away. I was taken aback. You know, when we left Hebron, I wanted to go home. I was like, all right, I've seen enough. Like, because it was such an intensity. And it was really like being like a police state ×5, right? And I also witnessed that discrimination, right? Me as an American was allowed to go through a checkpoint, but our Palestinian guide who lives there, right, could not drive through a checkpoint, had to get out and walk through a checkpoint. So I did experience this and talked about it and wrote about it afterwards. And again, I do think that it was interesting that we didn't even get to any of the other parts of the book, that whenever you enter into the chat and it is about Israel and Palestine, it's like it's elevated to a certain level. And it's like he got so much pushback on it, but you don't get pushback when you talk about these other things, right? There's no pushback if you say like, hey, you know, Russia shouldn't be invading Ukraine. You don't get any pushback from that. But when we're talking about, when we're seeing this hyper militaristic attack from, you know, and the Israeli government under Benjamin Netanyahu right now, where now Lebanon's being attacked right now. I mean, just it's almost like Netanyahu's like, I'm just going to continue to make war on anybody until, you know, it's his time to go. And we kind of talked about this October surprise. It's like, why aren't we able to say or critique it? And really, and this is the last thing I'll say, and before I pass to you, Miracles, because I know you're ready to go in. It's one of the to me real failings of the Harris-Walz ticket right now is the inability to even give something that passes as some type of middle ground, right? Now, again, nobody's trying to say or take away Israel's right to defend itself. But when you say, I'm defending myself, and you're leveling blocks where innocent people live. To kill one person, when you say you have this technology and you're the greatest military in the world and you're the greatest intelligence in the world, why can't you just get that person, right? I shouldn't have to die because I live in proximity to somebody. This is just where my apartment, I just moved, right? My apartment isn't, oh, the guy next door to me did something. Now you're going to take my whole, I shouldn't have to die because of that. And the inability to even say, we should not be like it shouldn't be like, oh, these people are just collateral damage when these are men, women, and children who have not done anything, who have not aggressed. We don't know what their political stance is. We don't know where they stand. You know what I'm saying? To me, to not be able to do that causes me to say all of this rhetoric about love and freedom and, you know, peace and all this is void.
It's conditional.
Yeah, when you don't, right. It's only that's
it's predicated upon how you look and what your ethnicity is.
1,000%. Miracle?
I think because Coates was very clear that this book was to writers. These are for people. Coates was very clear that this book that he wrote is for writers to call to them to take action, because we have been missing a lot of narratives and stories and perspectives. When he said that most of these newsrooms do not have a Palestinian anchor. Mostly people don't even have Palestinian guests on the shows, on the programs. And I think that when people are under attack, sometimes they don't have the ability to sit there and say, other people are under attack. I'm not the only person going through this. And we have people making decisions on who lives or dies because they don't see other people as humans or value. They just see people as collateral damage because they haven't been exposed to those stories. The first thing. The second thing is Coates was talking about the power of writing because people were trying to shelve his book. He was talking about like pain and anger and trauma, and what does that mean? Because all of us have some type of trauma that we are working through, and when we take unresolved trauma and you connect that to state violence, somebody's going to get hurt. But what I found very interesting is a lot of times when you speak about what's going on, the first thing people ask you is have you been there, right? Have you been there? Do you know what you're talking about? He's someone who's been there, who knows what he's talking about, and still he's now being told he doesn't have freedom to talk about what he actually saw, which I thought was like very funny. And then when he's talking about this moral line, this through line that no one has to die, people cannot wrap their minds around the fact that like you as a state can exist without force and violence. And one of the things, he was having a conversation on Jon Stewart, and Jon Stewart asked, how do we progress as a society without exploitation? Is exploitation required for any society, any state to exist? And I think that is the question we have to wrestle with, because we have
That's your bag right here.
Right.
Yeah.
Miracle wants no states, for those that don't know.
No, it's not even that. No states. It's that we don't even allow ourselves the ability to think about a state that does not require violence.